There's something quietly revealing about how people respond when you ask about their birthday plans. Some light up with excitement, already planning celebrations weeks in advance. Others shrug with genuine indifference and say, "It's just another day." That second response, the dismissal, the minimization, isn't random. It's a window into something deeper. How someone learned to relate to their own worth, to attention, to the idea that they might deserve to be celebrated simply for existing. Let's start where these patterns always start: childhood. The way we experience birthdays as adults is profoundly shaped by how birthdays were handled when we were young. For some people, birthdays weren't events, they were afterthoughts, forgotten dates on a calendar, or worse, sources of tension and disappointment. Imagine being a child who wakes up excited on their birthday, only to realize no one remembered. Or maybe someone remembered, but the day was overshadowed by parental conflict, financial stress, or emotional coldness. The child learns a brutal equation. This day that's supposed to be special isn't. And if this day isn't special, maybe I'm not either. This isn't melodrama. It's how the developing brain interprets patterns of emotional validation or the lack thereof. When birthdays are consistently neglected, dismissed, or marked by disappointment rather than joy, the child's psyche adapts. The adaptation sounds something like this: if I don't expect anything, I won't be hurt when nothing happens. It's a reasonable survival strategy for a child navigating emotional scarcity. The problem is that this strategy doesn't automatically update when circumstances change. The adult who had forgotten birthdays as a child may now be surrounded by people who would genuinely celebrate them, but the old programming still runs. They preemptively dismiss the significance of the day to protect against a disappointment that may no longer be coming. This brings us to the psychological mechanism at play: emotional detachment as defense. For some people, treating their birthday as mundane isn't genuine indifference, it's strategic numbness. They've learned that events centered on them carry emotional risk. What if people don't show up? What if the celebration falls flat? What if the attention feels awkward or undeserved? These fears aren't irrational. They're often based on historical evidence from formative experiences. So the safest option becomes opting out entirely. It's just another day becomes a shield against the vulnerability of hoping someone will make you feel special. This defense mechanism is particularly common in individuals with histories of emotional neglect or chronic invalidation. When your emotional needs were consistently unmet as a child, you learn to stop having them, or at least to stop expressing them. You become the low-maintenance person, the one who doesn't need anything, who doesn't make a fuss. This extends to birthdays, asking for celebration, expecting attention, or even quietly hoping someone remembers. All of this can feel dangerously exposing for someone whose early environment punished or ignored their needs. But not everyone who treats birthdays casually is operating from a place of emotional wounding. For some, the response is more philosophical than protective. These are the people for whom birthdays function as existential milestones rather than celebratory events. They're less interested in cake and more preoccupied with questions like, what did I accomplish this year? Am I living according to my values? How much closer am I to the person I want to become? For introspective, analytical, or philosophically minded individuals, birthdays can trigger reflection on mortality, purpose, and the passage of time, topics that don't naturally lend themselves to party hats and champagne. This existential approach isn't inherently problematic. It can reflect a mature relationship with time and self-assessment. But it's worth examining whether this reflective stance is genuinely how someone processes meaning, or whether it's intellectualization, a more sophisticated form of emotional avoidance. Sometimes what looks like philosophical depth is actually a way of bypassing feelings that seem too vulnerable to confront directly. Cultural context also plays a significant role in shaping birthday attitudes. In collectivist cultures or in families with strong values around humility and modesty, excessive focus on the individual can be seen as inappropriate or even shameful. For people raised in these contexts, birthday celebrations might genuinely feel uncomfortable, not because of personal wounding, but because of deeply held values about not placing oneself at the center of attention. This can be entirely healthy, assuming it's not masking deeper issues of self-worth. Which brings us to perhaps the most painful possibility, that "it's just another day" is code for "I don't believe I matter enough to be celebrated." This is where the psychology gets darker. For individuals with low self-esteem or unresolved trauma around visibility and worth, the idea of being celebrated can feel fundamentally wrong. It triggers thoughts like, "I don't deserve this attention. No one would genuinely want to celebrate me. If they knew the real me, they wouldn't bother." These beliefs aren't chosen consciously. They're internalized conclusions drawn from repeated experiences of being overlooked, dismissed, or made to feel invisible. The person who genuinely believes they don't deserve celebration will often sabotage attempts by others to honor them. They'll downplay the day, refuse to make plans, or become uncomfortable when people show up with gifts and well wishes. This isn't ingratitude, it's cognitive dissonance. When your internal narrative says, "I don't matter," and external reality presents evidence to the contrary, the discomfort can be overwhelming. It's easier to maintain the familiar narrative of insignificance than to integrate new information that challenges it. So what does healing look like for someone whose relationship with their birthday is complicated by these psychological patterns? It starts with awareness, recognizing that the "just another day" stance might be a symptom rather than a preference. It continues with self-compassion, which means allowing yourself to acknowledge that you might actually want to be celebrated, even if that desire feels dangerous or unfamiliar. It involves reframing birthdays not as self-indulgent events, but as opportunities to practice receiving attention, care, and acknowledgement without needing to earn it through achievement or usefulness. For those whose avoidance stems from emotional wounds, healing often requires gradually rebuilding trust in being seen. This might start small, allowing one trusted person to acknowledge your birthday, accepting a simple gesture without immediately deflecting or minimizing, sitting with the discomfort of being the center of positive attention, even briefly. Over time, these small practices can rewire the association between visibility and danger, teaching the nervous system that being celebrated doesn't inevitably lead to disappointment or exposure. Ultimately, how someone treats their birthday reveals their relationship with self-worth, attention, and emotional safety. The person who says, "It's just another day," might be protecting against old wounds, living according to philosophical principles, honoring cultural values, or struggling with deep-seated beliefs about their own worthiness. Understanding the psychology behind this stance allows for compassion, both for yourself, if this is your pattern, and for others whose relationship with celebration looks different from what you might expect, because it's rarely about apathy. It's about how we learned to navigate the complicated terrain of believing we might deserve to be seen, celebrated, and valued simply for existing. Many people secretly feel the same way about their birthdays, unseen, uncelebrated, or conflicted. If that resonates, tell me in the comments what birthdays mean to you. Don't forget to subscribe if you're healing old emotional patterns and want weekly insights into the hidden sides of the human mind.